Hello everybody, this is the Animorphs channel, and I'm trying something new today. We're going to read the books. Think of this as one of those reaction videos, you know, where somebody watches a video, comments on it, and there you go. This is admittedly going to be a bit longer because we are reading this. But it's not your standard read. It's not a classic audiobook. I'm going to be commenting where I feel comments may be required, or little thoughts cross my mind. But before we get too carried away, let's crack on with this. I apologise if I look a bit like a potato today. You might catch the sounds of me pulling my vape or drinking my coffee. I might even nip to the lav once or twice, but I'm reading a whole book here, you know. Bit of leniency on my part. Also, I've got to use my webcam rather than my high quality camera because that requires battery power. The webcam just plugs straight into the computer, so apologies for the crap quality. Right, so this is Animorphs number 1, The Invasion. You'll see it, not there, there. But this is the British version. That's the, I keep putting wrong, that's the American version. Clearly superior. Right, without further ado. Animorphs, Book 1, The Invasion. This is where it all begins. Chapter 1. By the way, I'm not putting on voices. I might do a little bit of accent here or there, but I don't want to embarrass myself too much. So I'm not going to come up to Cassie and, I don't know, "Hello, I'm Cassie." No, I'm going to do it proper. Chapter 1. My name is Jake. That's my first name, obviously. I can't tell you my last name. It would be too dangerous. The controllers are everywhere. Everywhere. And if they knew my full name, they could find me and my friends, and then, well, let's just say I don't want them to find me. What they do to people who resist them is too horrible to think about. I won't even tell you where I live. You'll just have to trust me that this is a real place. Probably Santa Barbara. A real town. It may even be your town. It's clearly not. I'm in Cornwall. I'm writing this all down so that more people will learn the truth. Maybe then, somehow, the human race can survive until the Andalites return and rescue us, as they promised they would. Maybe. My life used to be pretty normal. Normal, that is, until one Friday night at the shopping mall. I was there with Marco, my best friend. We were playing video games and hanging out at this cool store that sells comic books and stuff. The usual back in the 90s, perhaps, not anymore. Marco and I had run out of money for the games, right when he was ahead by a lot of points. Mostly, we're equally good at games. I have Sega at home, so I get lots of practice time in, but Marco has this amazing ability to analyse games and figure out all the little tricks. So sometimes he beats me. Or maybe I just wasn't concentrating very well. I'd had kind of a bad day at school. I'd tried out for the basketball team, and I didn't make the cut. There's a running gag here. It was like no big deal, really. Except that Tom, he's my big brother, he was this total legend on the junior high basketball team. Now he's the main scorer for the high school team. So everyone expected me to make the team easy. Only I didn't. Like I said, no big thing. But it was on my mind just the same. Lately, Tom and I hadn't been hanging out as much. Not like we used to. So I figured, you know, if I got this old position on the team... Well, anyway, we were out of money and getting ready to head home when we ran into Tobias. Tobias was... I guess he still is kind of a strange guy. He was new at school, and he wasn't the toughest kid around, so he got picked on a lot. I actually met Tobias when he had his head in a toilet. There were these two big guys holding him down and laughing while they flushed, sending Tobias's scraggly blonde hair swirling around the bowl. I told the two creeps to step off, and ever since then, Tobias figured I was his friend. What you'll notice as well, when we get to the Tobias books, he's got brown hair, so I think that was... until we get to the later books, but that's an aside, really. "What's up?" Tobias asked. I shrugged. Oh, by the way, it was yeah, brown hair in the TV show as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was brown. Christopher Ralph, he had brown hair. So, incorrect. One of them. I shrugged. Not much. We're heading home. Out of quarters, Marco commented. Certain people keep forgetting that the sleaze troll shows up right after you cross the Neverfjord. So certain people keep losing the game, and losing our quarter. Marco kept jerking his thumb at me, just in case Tobias couldn't figure out who he meant by certain people. So, maybe I'll walk home with you guys, Tobias said. I said, sure, why not? We were heading for the exit when I spotted Rachel and Cassie. Rachel is kind of pretty, I guess. I mean, okay, she's very pretty, although since she is my cousin, I don't really think about her in that way. He clearly doesn't live in the south. Or Yorkshire. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, and that kind of very clean, very wholesome look. She's one of those people who always knows the right clothes to wear and how to look like they just walked out of those fashion magazines girls like. She's also very graceful because she takes gymnastics, even though she says she's too tall to ever be really good at it. Cassie is sort of the opposite. For one thing, she's usually wearing jeans and a plaid shirt, or something else real casual. She's black and wears her hair very short most of the time. She had it longer for a while, but then she went back to short, which I like. Strange thing to focus on. Cassie is quieter than Rachel, more peaceful, like she always understands everything on some different, more mystical level. I guess you could say I kind of like Cassie. Sometimes we sit together on the bus, even though I never know what to say to her. You guys going home? I asked Rachel. You shouldn't go through the construction site by yourselves. I mean, being girls and all. Oh, casual sexism by Jake. I love it. So very 90s. That was a mistake. I should never have suggested to Rachel that she's weak or helpless. Rachel may look like Little Miss Teen Model or what. Are we going to cancel Jake, by the way? Are we going to cancel Animorphs now? Because of the casual sexism. I mean, everyone else is being bloody cancelled, so... Cancel Jake Berenson. Never mind his antics at the end of the war. Right, where was I? Sorry, I got distracted. Rachel may look like Little Miss Teen Model or whatever, but she thinks she's Storm from the X-Men. Are you going to come and protect us, you big, strong man? I don't know quite how to say that. She said, you think we're helpless just because I'd appreciate it if they did walk with us. Cassie interrupted. I know you're afraid of it. I know you're not afraid of anything, Rachel, but I guess I am. Rachel couldn't say much about that. That's the way Cassie is. She always has the right words to stop any argument without making anyone feel bad. We'll see how that goes out for the rest of the series. So there we were. The five of us. Marco, Tobias, Rachel, Cassie and me. 5 normal mole rats heading home. Sometimes I think about that one last moment when we were still just normal kids. It's like it was a million years ago. Like it was some totally different group of kids. You know what I was afraid of then? I was afraid of admitting to Tom that I hadn't made the team. That was as scary as life got back then. 5 minutes later, life got a lot scarier. To get home from the mall, we could either go the long way round, which is the safe way, or we could cut through this abandoned construction site and hope that there weren't any axe murderers hanging around there. My mum and dad have sworn to ground me until I'm 20 if they ever find out I've cut through the construction site. Excuse me. So anyway, we crossed the road and headed into the abandoned construction site. It was a big area, surrounded on two sides by trees, with the highway separating it from the mall area. There's a broad open field There's a broad open... You have to forgive me my mistakes as well. I've got a whole book to go and I'm already... There's a broad open field between the construction site and the nearest houses. It's a very isolated place. Originally, it was supposed to be this new shopping centre. Now it was just all these half-finished buildings looking like a ghost town. There were huge piles of rusted steel beams, pyramids of giant concrete pipes, little mountains of dirt, deep pits that had filled up with black, muddy water, and a creaking, rusted construction crane that I had climbed once while Marco stayed below and told me I was being an idiot. Makes sense? It was a totally deserted place, full of shadows and sounds that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. When Marco and I went there during the day, we always found all these beer cans and liquor bottles. Sometimes we found the ashes of little campfires back in the hidden nooks and crannies of the buildings. So we knew that people came there at night. All that was on my mind as we crept through the site. It was Tobias who saw it first. He had been walking along, gazing up at the sky. I guess he was looking at the stars or something. That's the way Tobias is sometimes, off on his own little world. Suddenly Tobias stopped. He was pointing almost straight up. "Look," he said. "What?" I didn't want to be distracted because I was pretty sure I'd heard the sound of a chainsaw killer creeping up behind us. "Just look," Tobias said. His voice was strange, amazed sounding, but serious at the same time. So I looked up, and there it was, a brilliant blue-white light that scooted across the sky. Going fast at first, too fast for it to be an airplane. Then slower and slower. "What is it?" Tobias shook his head. "I don't know." I looked at Tobias and he looked back at me. We both knew what we thought it was, but we didn't want to say it. Mark and Rachel would have laughed, we figured. But Cassie just blurted it right out. "It's a flying saucer!" Do 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 do. That's chapter 1. We've already got a firm grasp on the age range, young adult sort of writing. Quite simple words, quite unusually put together sometimes in order to make it more readable to someone of that age. And we're also getting some very 90s attitudes from these kids. So there you go, first chapter. I need my coffee. Right, so aliens landing. Chapter 2. I do apologise for my throat, by the way. It's not COVID, don't worry. "A flying saucer," Marco said. He did laugh. That is, until he looked up. I could feel my own heart pounding in my chest. I felt weird and excited and afraid all at once. "It's coming this way," Rachel said. It's hard to be sure. I could barely whisper, my mouth was so dry. "No, it's coming this way," Rachel said. She has a very definite way of talking. Like she's totally sure of everything she says. Rachel was right. Whatever it was coming closer. And it was slowing down. Now I could see pretty clearly what it looked like. "It's not exactly a flying saucer," I said. First of all, it wasn't all that big. It was about as long as a school bus. The front end was a pod shaped almost like an egg. Extending from the back of the pod was a long, narrow shaft. There were two crooked, stubby, wing-like things on the end of each wing was a long tube that glowed bright blue on the back end. The little spaceship looked almost cute. You know, kind of harmless, except that it had a sort of tail, a mean-looking tail that curved up and forward, coming to a point that looked as sharp as a needle. "Definitely," Marco agreed. The little ship kept coming nearer, going slower all the time. "It's stopping," Rachel said. She had the same strange, not quite real tone in her voice that I had. Like we couldn't believe what we were seeing. Like maybe we didn't want to believe. "I think it sees us," Marco said. "Should we run? Maybe we should run home and get a camera. Do you know how much money we could get for a video of a real UFO?" Video of a real UFO. Tongue twister there. "If we run, they might, I don't know, zap us with phasers on full power," I said. I meant it as a joke, kind of. "Phasers are only on Star Trek," Marco said. rolling his eyes the way he does when he thinks I'm being a dweeb. Wow, I haven't seen that word in a long time. Dweeb. What a word. Like he was some kind of expert on alien spaceships. Right. The ship stopped and hovered almost directly above our heads, maybe 30 metres in the air. I could feel the hair on my head standing on end. When I glanced at Rachel, it was almost funny. She has this long blonde hair, and it was sticking straight out in every direction. Only Cassie looked normal. "What do you think it is?" Marco asked. He sounded a little shakier, not so laid back now that the thing was so close. To be honest, I was a little scared too. A little scared, as in so terrified I couldn't move. But at the same time, it was all cool. It was all cool beyond any coolness ever. Okay. I mean, it was a spaceship, right there over my head. Tobias was actually grinning. But that's Tobias for you. He's never scared of weird stuff. It's the normal stuff he can't stand. "I think it's going to land," he said, this huge smile on his face. His eyes were bright and excited, and his blonde hair was standing up in clumps. The ship began to descend. It's coming right for us! "It's coming right at us," I cried. I had to fight an urge to run, yammering across the field all the way home, where I could crawl into my bed and pull the covers over my head. But I knew that this was important. An important, amazing thing. I know I had to stay and see it all. I guess the others felt the same way, because we all just stood there, as the ship hummed and glowed and slowly settled down in an open space between piles of junk and tumbled walls. I noticed there were black burn marks across the top of the pod section. Some of the skin of the pod had been melted. It touched the ground, and instantly the blue lights went off. Rachel's hair fell back down to her neck. "It isn't very big, is it?" Rachel whispered. "It's about," I tried to think, "about 3 or 4 times as big as our minivan." "We should tell someone," Marco said. "I mean, this is kind of major, you know? Spaceships don't just land in a construction site every day. We should call the cops or the army or the president or something. We'd be totally famous. We'd get on TV for sure." "Yeah, you're right," I agreed. "We should call someone." But none of us moved. None of us was just going to walk away from a spaceship. "I wonder if we should try to talk to it," Rachel suggested. She was standing there with her hands on her hips looking at the spaceship like it was a puzzle she had to figure out. "I mean, we should communicate, if that's even possible." Tobias nodded. He stepped forward and held out his hands. I guess he was showing whoever was in the ship that he wasn't carrying any kind of weapon or anything. "It's safe," he said in a loud, clear voice. "We won't hurt you." "Do you think they speak English?" I wondered. "Well, everyone speaks English on Star Trek," Cassie said with a nervous laugh. "That's 2 Star Trek references now. Already. And we're only on book 12. Tobias tried again. "Please, come out. We won't hurt you." "I know." I need to do like a voice filter for full speak or something. "I know." Maybe not. I froze. Okay. I definitely heard someone say, "I know." Only there hadn't been any sound. I heard it, but I didn't really hear it. Maybe this was all a dream. I looked kind of sideways at Cassie, and she looked back at me. Our eyes met. She had heard it too. I looked at Rachel. She was turning her head back and forth, like she was looking for where the sound, that wasn't a sound, could have come from. I started to get a sick, twisted feeling in my stomach. "Did everyone hear that?" Tobias whispered. We all nodded at once, very slowly. "Can you come out?" Tobias asked in his loud, talking to aliens voice. "Yes, do not be frightened." "We won't be frightened," Tobias said. "Speak for yourself," I muttered. The others giggled nervously. A thin arc of light appeared. A doorway. Who the bloody hell's that? Sorry, someone beeping outside. A thin arc of light appeared. A doorway, opening slowly in the smooth side of the pod part of the ship. I stood there, totally hypnotized. I just stared, waiting. The opening grew like a crescent moon at first, then a full, bright circle. And then he appeared. My first reaction was that someone had cloned a person and a deer together. The creature had a head and shoulders and arms that were more or less where they should have been, though the skin was a pale shade of blue. But below that he had fur, a mix of blue and tan, covering a four-legged body that didn't really look like it belonged to a deer. That really did look like it belonged to a deer, or maybe a small horse. He ducked his head out of the doorway, and I could see that even the fairly normal-looking parts of him weren't all that normal. For a start, he had no mouth, just 3 vertical slits. And then there were his eyes. 2 of them were where they should have been, although they were a glittery green colour that was kind of shocking. But the real shock was the other eyes. He had what seemed like horns, only on top of each horn was an eye. The horns could move, twisting to point the eyes front and back or up and down. I thought the eyes were bad, until I saw the tail. It was like a scorpion's tail, thick and powerful looking. On the end was a wickedly curved, very sharp-looking horn or stinger. It reminded me of the alien spaceship. It had seemed kind of cute and harmless till you noticed the tail. The alien seemed kind of harmless at first glance too. Then you saw that tail and you thought, whoa, this guy could do some damage if he wanted. That's a lot of damage. Sorry for that, that was a bit cringe. Hello, Tobias said. His voice was gentle, like he was talking to a baby. He was grit. I'm not sure Alfanga would like that. Hello! Reminds me of Friday night dinner. Shalom! Hello, Jackie! You Americans might not know that reference. If you don't, I'm sorry. It's more of a British thing. Shalom! I realised, I think Jake's Jewish too, I don't know. I realised I was smiling too. And at the same moment, I realised that there were tears in my eyes. I can't really describe how it felt, except that it seemed like the alien was someone I'd known forever. Like an old friend I hadn't seen in a long, long time. I don't think this was ever explained why they felt this way. I don't know. We might find out. Hello, the alien said, in that silent way that you only heard inside your head. Hi, we all said back. To my surprise, the alien staggered. He fell out of the ship to the ground. Tobias tried to grab him and hold him up, but the alien slipped. Makes me wonder how close are they, because Tobias is obviously close enough that he tried to reach out and grab him. They must have been pretty bloody close to it. Tobias tried to grab him and hold him up, but the alien slipped from his grasp and he grabbed him. Slipped from his grasp and fell back to the dirt. Look, Tobias cried. Cassie cried. Sorry. She pointed at a burn that half... Oh, for God's sake, let's start all that again, shall we? Look, Cassie cried. She pointed at a burn mark that covered half the alien's right side. He's hurt. Yes, I am dying, he said. Can we help you? We can call an ambulance or something, Marco said. We can bandage that wound, Cassie said. Jake, give me your shirt. We can tear it up and make bandages. Cassie's parents were both vets, and she's totally into animals. Not that this was an animal. Not exactly, anyway. No, it's not an animal at all, Jake. Come on, behave. No, I will die. The wound is fatal. No! I cried. Bloody hell. You can't die. You're the first alien ever to come to Earth. You can't die. I don't know why I was so upset. I just knew that way down deep inside it hurt me to think of him dying. I am not the first. There are many, many others. Other aliens like you? Tobias demanded. The alien shook his big head Do they have big heads? Alien shook his big head slowly. I didn't think Andalites had relatively big head. I don't know. Shook it side to side. Not like me. Then he cried out in pain. A silent sound that echoed horribly inside my mind. For a moment, I had actually felt him dying. Not like me, he repeated. They are different. Different? How? I said. I will remember his answer forever. He said, they have come to destroy you. Whew. Yeah, are Andalites supposed to have big heads, like, compared to ours or something? I never knew that. Or I never remembered that. The alien shook his big head slowly. And Tobias talking to him like he's a baby as well. This guy's probably not happy. I need my refueling. Again, apologies for the occasional like not Bruce, the guy on Bruce Almighty, Evan Baxter. That must be what I sound like at some point. But we've got a long way to go, so less fucking around, right? I told myself I wouldn't swear. Right, that's it. This isn't rated for kids anymore. Right, chapter 3. It wouldn't be anyway, because Jake's a sexist pig, as we found out earlier on. Right. Chapter 3. They have come to destroy you. It was strange, the way we all just knew he was telling the truth. No one said, no way, or you're making it up. We all just knew. He was dying, and he was trying to warn us of something terrible. They are called Yeerks. They are different from us, different from you as well. Are you telling us they're already here on Earth? Rachel demanded. Many are here, hundreds, maybe more. Now I've got to say, personally I think there would probably be thousands at this point. Hundreds, just reading later on into the books, it sort of seems a bit low in numbers. Considering by this point they've already created massive Yeerk pools, like the size of towns. So I think that's a KASU, as they call it. Shut up! Who's that? Mute. Where was I? Let's just carry on. Yeah, I should unmute my phone actually. So you don't want any distractions like that again. Right, that's better. Why hasn't anybody noticed them? Marco said reasonably. I think somebody would have mentioned it at school. You do not understand. Yeerks are different. They have no body, like yours or mine. They do. They live in the bodies of other species. They are... I've got to say a couple of things about what Elfangor said there. Firstly, they do have bodies, they're just very small. They live in the bodies of other species. Now, being zoologist here, you wouldn't call any aliens species by very fact that you don't fall into our evolutionary tree. And species is a branch of that evolutionary tree. Or a description of a description of branches of that tree. So they wouldn't be called species. At least I assume they wouldn't be. Christ, this chapter started rough, hasn't it? I've started even rougher. I guess he couldn't think of a word to explain Yeerks, so he closed his eyes and seemed to concentrate. Suddenly, a bright picture popped into my head. I saw a grey-green, slimy thing, like a snail without its shell, only bigger. The size of a rat, maybe. It wasn't a pretty picture. Now, come on. What's up with this chapter? Right, two things. The whole telepathy, is it telepathy? I don't know. Putting an image into someone else's head. I don't think that ever happens again. I think that's another KASU or almost like a plot convenience thing. I could be wrong, it might happen again, but I don't think it does. Secondly, a snail without a shell. It's called a slug, Catherine. Jesus. Sorry. Carrying on. I'm guessing that was a Yeerk, Marco said. Either that or a very big wad of slimy chewing gum. They are almost powerless without hosts. Suddenly, we felt that blast of pain, straight from the alien. I could also feel his sadness. He knew his time was almost up. The Yeerks are parasites. They must have a host to live in. In this form they are known as controllers. They enter the brain and are absorbed into it, taking over the host's thoughts and feelings. Again, I think that's thoughts and feelings. I thought the thoughts and feelings weren't taken over. I thought it was just the physical form and the actions. Again, it's another. It's a first book thing. There are a lot of things that get retconned later on. They try to get the host to accept them voluntarily. It's easier that way. Otherwise, the host may be able to resist, at least a little. Are you saying they take over human beings? Rachel asked. People? These things take over their bodies? Look, this is serious stuff, I said. You shouldn't be telling us. We're just kids, you know. This is like something the government should know about. We had hoped to stop them, the alien continued. Swarms of our bug fighters were waiting when our dome ship came out of Z-space. Yeah, I'm saying that right. We knew of their mothership and were ready for the bug fighters, but the Yeerks surprised us. They had hidden a powerful blade ship in a crater of your moon. We fought, but we lost. They have tracked me here. They will be here soon to eliminate all traces of me and my ship. How can they do that? Cassie wondered. The alien seemed to smile with his eyes. Their Dracon beams will leave nothing behind but a few molecules of this ship and this body, he said. I sent a message to my home world. We Andalites fight the Yeerks wherever they go throughout the universe. My people will send help, but it may take a year, even more, and by then the Yeerks will have control of this planet. After that, there is no hope. You must tell people. You must warn your people. Another spasm of pain ripped through him, and we all knew he was nearly gone. No one's ever going to believe us, Marco said hopelessly. He looked at me and shook his head. No way. He was right. If these Yeerks were to wipe out the Andalite ship, how on earth would we ever convince people? They'd think we were either nuts or on drugs. Bit of drug stuff in a children's book. I don't care if he thinks he's going to die. We have to try to help him, Rachel said. We can get him to a hospital, or maybe Cassie's parents. There is no time. No time, the Andalite said. Then his eyes brightened. Perhaps. What? Go into my ship. You will see a small blue box, very plain. Bring it to me, quickly. I have very little time, and the Yeerks will find me soon. See, I don't understand why he doesn't just morph at this point, personally. I'm sure he's got plenty of small morphs or anything that he can use to heal himself. But again, I'm thinking too much. We all looked at each other. Who was going to be the one to go inside the ship? Somehow, we all seemed to agree that it would be me. Actually, I didn't agree, but everyone else did. Go ahead, Tobias said. I want to stay with him. He knelt beside the Andalite and placed a comforting hand on the alien's narrow shoulder. I looked at the doorway into the spacecraft. I glanced at Cassie. Go ahead, she said, sending me a smile. You're not scared. Shut up, Cassie. How would you know? Bloody hell, Cassie. She was wrong. I was plenty scared. But the way she smiled at me, I wasn't about to weasel out. I walked over to the door of the ship and looked inside. It was surprisingly simple. It looked cosy almost. Everything was a creamy colour, with rounded edges and shapes that tended to be oval. That was one of the things that helped me to spot the box so easily. It was sky blue and square, maybe 8 centimetres on each side. It seemed kind of heavy for being so small. I stepped up into the ship. There was no chair, just a sort of open space where I guess the Andalite stood on his 4 hooves while he worked the few controls. There weren't a lot of buttons or anything. I wondered if the Andalite controlled the ship with his thoughts. I don't think they do, but maybe. I quickly reached for the box and started to head back outside. But then something caught my eye. It was a small, three-dimensional picture. 4 Andalites standing all together, looking like a strange gathering of deer with solemn faces. 2 of them looked very small. Kids. I realised that this was a picture of the Andalite's family. It filled me with sadness to think that here he was, dying, millions of kilometres from his family. Kilometres? I think that's just in this version. Dying because he had tried to protect the people of Earth. I felt a small flame of anger against the Yeerks, or controllers, or whatever they were, for causing this. I went back to the circle of my friends. "Here's the box," I told the Andalite. "Thank you." Was that your family? That picture?" "Yes." "I'm real sorry," I said. What else could I say? "There is something I may be able to do to help you fight the Yeerks." "What?" Rachel demanded. "I know that you are young. I know that you have no power with which to test the... For God's sake. I know that you have no power with which... Bloody hell, this sentence. I know that you have no power with which to resist the controllers. But I may be able to help you give you some small powers that may help." I screwed that one up, didn't I? We all looked at each other. All except Tobias, who never took his gaze off of the alien. "If you wish, I can give you powers that no other human being has ever had." Powers? What was that supposed to mean? "It is a piece of Andalite technology that the Yeerks do not have," the Andalite explained. "A technology that enables us to pass unnoticed in many parts of the universe. The power to morph. We have never shared this power, but your need is great." "Morph? Morph how?" Rachel asked. Her eyes narrowed. "To change your bodies," the Andalite said. "To become any other species. Any animal." Marco laughed derisively. "Become animals?" Marco isn't the most accepting person in the world. "You will only need to touch a creature to acquire its DNA pattern, and you will be able to become that creature. It requires concentration and determination, but if you are strong, you can do it. There are limitations, problems, dangers even, but there is no time to explain it all. No time. You will have to learn for yourselves. But first, do you wish to receive this power?" In all this time he could have morphed something and been fine and run off with them. "He's kidding, right?" Marco asked me. "No," Tobias said softly. "He's not kidding." "This is nuts," Marco said. "This whole thing is nuts. Yeerks and spaceships and slugs taking over people's brains and Andalites and the power to change into animals. Give me a break." "Yeah, it is beyond weird," I agreed. "We're off the map of weirdness by this point," Rachel said. "But unless we're all just dreaming, I think we'd better deal with this." "He's dying," Tobias reminded us. "I'll do it," Cassie said. That surprised me. Cassie isn't usually so quick to decide, but I guess, like Tobias, she felt the truth of what the Andalite was saying. "I think we should all decide together," I suggested, "one way or the other." "What's that?" Rachel asked. She was again looking up towards the stars. Far, far overhead, 2 pinpoints of bright red light were shooting across the sky. "Yeerks," the Andalite said. "Yeerks," the Andalite said. The Yeerks. The Andalite said the word in our minds, and we could feel his hatred. And that's chapter 3. Very tense so far. This is, of course, the opening scene, probably the most iconic scene of the Animorphs series. Chapter 4. Yeerks. The twin red lights slowed. They turned in a circle and came back towards us. "There is no more time. You must decide." "We have to do this," Tobias said. How else can we fight these controllers? This is so insane, Marco said. Insane. I'd like more time, but we don't have that choice, Rachel said. I'm for it. What do you say, Jake? Cassie asked me. It was odd. Like suddenly I was the one who had to decide for everyone. I looked up at the Yerk's ship. What had the Andalite called them? Bug fighters? They were circling closer, like dogs sniffing for a scent. I looked down at the Andalite and remembered the picture of his family. Would they even know what had happened to him? I looked at each of the people around me. My usually funny, occasionally annoying best friend Marco. Rachel, my smart, pretty, confident cousin. And Cassie, who everyone knew liked animals more than she liked most people. Finally, I looked at Tobias. It was weird, the feeling I had at that moment, staring at him. A chill or something. We have to, Tobias said to me. Slowly, I nodded. Yes, we have no choice. Then each of you press your hand against one of the sides of the square. We did. 5 hands, each pressed against one side. Then a 6th hand, different from ours, with too many fingers. Do not be afraid, the Andalite said. Something like a shock, only pleasurable, seemed to run through me, a tingle that almost made me laugh. Go now, the Andalite said. Only remember this. Never remain in animal form for more than 2 of your Earth hours. Never. That is the greatest danger of the morphing. If you stay longer than 2 hours, you will be trapped, unable to return to human form. 2 hours, I repeated. Are they going to pay attention to that? No. No. Suddenly, some new fear... There's got to be a comma there, Catherine. Suddenly, some new fear washed through the Andalite's mind. Linked as I was to him, I could feel it as a dread that crawled up my spine. He was staring up at the sky with his main eyes. Something else was up there with the bug fighters. Visser 3, he comes. Sorry. Just the worst thought just came to my mind. What? I was shaking with this new terror. What's a Visser? Who's a Visser? Go now. Run. Visser 3 is here. He is the most deadly of your enemies. Of all Yerks, he alone has the power to morph. The same power you now have. Run. No, we'll stay with you, Rachel said firmly. Maybe we can help. Again, it was as if the alien was smiling at us with his eyes. No, you must save yourselves. Save yourselves and save your planet. The Yerks are here. We all looked up, craning our necks. Sure enough, the 2 red lights were sinking towards us, and they had been joined by a 3rd ship, far larger, black as a shadow within a shadow. But how are we supposed to fight these controllers? Rachel demanded. You must find a way. Now run. I jerked from the force of his command. He's right. Run, I yelled. Excuse me. We ran. All but Tobias, who knelt beside the Andalite and took his hand. The Andalite pressed his other hand against Tobias's head. Tobias rocked back like he had been shocked. Then he, too, was up and running, stumbling over the loose junk and potholes of the construction site. Did we ever find out what he did to Tobias? Because I know what eventually happens, but I don't think it came from this, so maybe we'll find out later. Again, maybe it's not one of those things where it just didn't materialise into anything. A beam of bright red light snapped on. It was a spotlight from one of the bug fighters. The beam lit up the fallen Andalite and his ship. A spotlight from the 2nd bug fighter joined the 1st, and the Andalite shone brilliant as a star. I hit the dirt hard. I saw my leg lit up within the circle of that spotlight. I yanked it to me and crawled fast, scraping my elbows and knees over sharp stones. The 5 of us crouched below a low, crumbling wall, afraid to move, afraid to look, but just as afraid to look away. Slowly the bug fighters descended. It was easy to see where they'd got their nickname. They were slightly larger than the Andalite fighter, and shaped like legless cockroaches. There were small windows like eyes on the forward thrust head of the bug, and on either side of the head were two very long, very sharp serrated spears. The Yerk bug fighters touched down, one on either side of the Andalite ship. "Okay, you can wake me up now," Marco said in a rattled whisper. "I've had enough of this dream." The larger ship began to descend. I don't know what it was about that ship, but as it got closer I started to feel like I couldn't breathe. I tried to suck in a deep lungful of air and couldn't. I tried to swallow and couldn't. I wanted to run, but my legs were jelly. I was shaking from a fear so deep it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It was the same fear that the Andalite had shown when he had realised Visser 3 was coming. The ship settled towards the ground. It looked like it was going to land directly on a big rusted earth mover parked there, but as the Visser's ship descended, the earth mover just sizzled and disappeared. Blimey. Visser 3's ship was built like some ancient weapon. It reminded me of one of those battle axes the old-time knights used when they were hacking off the heads of their foes. There was a main part, like the handle of the axe, with a big triangular point on the front. That part had to be the bridge. At the rear were two huge scimitar wings. It was 8 or 10 times the size of the bug fighters. The blade ship landed. A door opened. Cassie started to scream. I clamped my hand over her mouth. They leapt from the ship, whirling and thrusting and slicing the air. Creatures that looked like walking weapons. They stood on 2 bent-back legs and had 2 very long arms. Just like the Andalites got a big head, I don't know. On each arm there were curved horn blades growing out of the wrist and elbow. There were other blades at their bent-back knees, and 2 more blades at the end of their tails. They had feet like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But it was the head that got your attention. A neck like a snake, a mouth that was almost a falcon's beak, and from the forehead 3 dagger-like horns raked forward. Hawk-Bajir controllers. I jumped, hearing the Andalite's words in my mind again. They were fainter than before, strained, like someone yelling from far away. "Did you guys?" I asked. Rachel nodded. "Yeah." "The Hawk-Bajir are a good people, despite their fearsome looks," the Andalite said. "But they have been enslaved by the Yerks. Each of them now carries a Yerk in his head. They are to be pitied." "Pity, right," Rachel said grimly. "They're walking killing machines, look at them." But our attention was drawn away by a new form that crept and slithered and shimmied out of the blade ship. "Taxon controllers," the Andalite said. I knew he was trying to tell us all he could, even to the end, trying to prepare us for what we were up against. "The Taxons are evil." "Yeah," Marco muttered. "I think I would have guessed that." Are they evil? I think Elfanger of all people should know there's probably a bit more nuance to that. Then again, it's been a while since I read the Andalite Chronicles. "They were like massive centipedes, twice as long as a grown man, so big around that if you tried to hook one, your arms wouldn't even make it halfway. Not that anyone would ever want to. They had dozens of legs that supported the lower 2/3 of their bodies. The top third was held upright, and there the rows of legs became smaller, with little lobster claw hands. Around the top of their disgusting tubular bodies were 4 eyes, each like a wiggling globule of red jelly. And at the very end, pointing straight up in the air, was a round mouth ringed by hundreds of tiny teeth. Hawk-Bajir and Taxons poured from the blade ship, spreading out around the area like well-trained marines. They were holding small... They turned out not to be very much like marines at all, I assure you. They were holding small, pistol-sized things that were definitely weapons. They formed a ring around the Andalite and his ship. Suddenly, one of the Hawk-Bajir came straight towards us. He took one big, bounding step, and he was practically on top of us. I hugged the dirt like it was my last hope. I wished I could dig a hole. I saw a flash of Marco's face. His eyes were huge. His lips were drawn back in what could have been a grin, except that I knew it was an expression of pure terror. And that's chapter 4. Hope you're enjoying it so far. Again, this is a pilot episode of this series. It's going to be a long video, but we are reading the whole book, if you've made it this far. It could be that I upload this video and people don't show any interest, in which case this would be the only episode, but who knows, maybe people like this sort of idea of just sitting down with me and going through this book, making the occasional comments where I feel them necessary. And one of the ideas that I've possibly got is when it comes to like chronicles or anything that's not in the main series. It could be a live stream with fan comments. We do like a big read along. But that's for the future, if we ever get round to doing that. But how far are we in so far? We're probably about barely even a fifth of the way through the book, and we've gone 50 minutes. So we're going to be here for a while. I'm going to end up needing another coffee. So we've been introduced to the two main alien foes. The Hork-Bajir and the Taxxons. Right, chapter 5. The Hork-Bajir pointed his gun, or whatever it was, around at the darkness. His snake head swerved left and right, trying to penetrate the gloom. "Silence," the Andalite warned us. "Hork-Bajir do not see well in darkness, but their hearing is very good." The Hork-Bajir moved closer still. He was 2 meters away now, with just the low wall between us. He had to have heard my heart pounding. Maybe he didn't know what the sound was. Maybe he didn't recognize the sounds of 5 terrified kids whose knees were quivering and teeth were chattering. Kids who were breathing in short, sudden gasps. I was sure I was going to die, right then. I could see, in my mind, the way those vicious wrists and elbow blades were going to slice my head from my body. If you've never been really afraid, let me tell you, it does things to you. It takes over your mind and your body. You want to scream. You want to run. You want to wet your trousers. You want to throw yourself down on the ground and cry and beg, "Please, please, 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 don't kill me." And if you think you're brave, well, wait till you're cowering a few meters away from a monster who could turn you into coleslaw in about 3 seconds flat. But then the Andalite's voice was in my head again. Courage, my friends. And this warm, I don't have any words to explain it. It was just this warmth that spread all through me. It was like when you're a little kid and you've had a terrible nightmare and you've woken up screaming. You know how you used to feel. You know how you used to feel better when your mum or dad would turn on the light and come in and sit beside you in bed? That's what it was like. I mean, I was still terrified. The Hork-Bajir was still there, so real and so deadly. I could hear him breathing. I could smell him. But at the same time, I could feel the panic coming under control. I could feel the strength flowing from the doomed Andalite. He was letting us borrow some of his courage, even though he must have been afraid himself. The Hork-Bajir moved away. Something new was coming from the blade ship. Shaking and chattering, I rose high enough to look over the low wall. Every Hork-Bajir and every Taxxon was turned towards the ship now. "They're all standing at attention," I whispered. "How can you tell?" Marco whispered back. "Who knows when a jelly-eyed centipede or a walking salad shooter from hell is standing at attention?" Then he appeared. "Visser 3, the Andalite said. I thought I heard something then. Well, Visser 3's coming into my house. Visser 3 was an Andalite. Or at least he was an Andalite controller. "What the?" Rachel said. "Isn't that an Andalite?" "Only once the Yeerk has been able to take an Andalite body," the Andalite said. "There is only one Andalite controller. That one is Visser 3. Visser 3 walked confidently towards the wounded Andalite. The Visser seemed so much like the Andalite it was hard to tell them apart at first. He had the same mouthless face, the same extra stalk eyes that turned here and there, checking out everything in all directions, the same powerful yet sleek four-legged body, and the same wicked tail. But if the Visser looked like any normal Andalite, he felt different. It was like he was wearing a mask, only you just knew that under the fake sweetness of the mask there was something twisted and foul. Well, well, Visser 3 said. I've got to do a voice for a moment now. I almost had a heart attack when I realised I was hearing the Visser's thoughts. Can he hear our thoughts? Cassie whispered. If he can, we're so dead. I don't even want to think about it, Rachel told her. He cannot hear your thoughts, the Andalite said. As long as you don't... Wait. It's almost as if Elfanga is able to hear their thoughts. As long as you don't direct them to him. You hear his thoughts because he is broadcasting them for all to hear. This is a great victory for him, so he wants all to hear. What have we here? A meddling Andalite. Visser 3 looked more closely at the Andalite's ship. Ah, but no ordinary Andalite warrior. Prince Elfangor Cyriniel Shantel, if I am not mistaken. An honour to meet you. You're a legend. How many of our fighters have you shredded? 7? Or was it 8 by the time the battle had ended? The Andalite didn't answer, but I had the feeling maybe it had been more than 8. The very last Andalite in this sector of space. Yes, I'm afraid your dome ship has been completely destroyed. Completely. I watched it burn as it fell into the atmosphere of this little world. There will be others, the Andalite prince said. The Visser took a step closer to the Andalite. Yes, and when they come it will be too late. This world will be mine, my own contribution to the Yerk Empire, our greatest conquest, and then I'll be Visser 1. What do you want with these humans? The Andalite asked. You have your Taxan allies, you have your Hawkbidgear slaves, and other slaves from other worlds. Why these people? Because there are so many, and they are so weak. Visser 3 sneered. It's a proper Bond villain. Billions of bodies, and they have no idea what's happening. With this many hosts we can spread throughout the universe, unstoppable. Billions of us. We'll have to build a few thousand Yerk pools just to raise the Yerks for half this number of bodies. Face it, Andalite, you have fought well and bravely, but you have lost. Visser 3 stepped right up to the Andalite. I could feel the Andalite's fear, but rather than cower, he fought the pain of his wound and climbed to his feet. He knew he was going to die. He wanted to die on his feet, looking his enemy in the face. But Visser 3 was not done taunting his foe. I promise you one thing, Prince Elfangor. When we have this planet with its rich harvest of bodies, we will move against the Andalite homeworld. I will personally hunt down your family, and I will personally oversee the placement of my most faithful lieutenants in their heads. I hope they will resist. I hope that they will resist, so I can hear their minds scream. I'm going to love playing him. The Andalite struck. His tail whipped up and over, so fast you couldn't really see it. The Visser twisted his head aside. The Andalite's tail blade missed the Visser's head by bare centimetre, but it sliced into his shoulder. Blood, or something like blood, sprayed from the wound. Yes, I hissed. I need to do like sound effects. Hold on just a second. One of the things I did plan to do for this. Come on, internet! I could hear... Sorry. I could hear the Visser's howl of pain in my head. Oh, blimey. Where was I? At the same time, a blinding beam of blue light shot from the tail of the Andalite ship. It sliced into the nearest bug fighter. Hork-Bajir and Taxons scattered. Even crouching behind the wall, I could feel a wave of blistering heat. The bug fighter sizzled and disappeared. "Fire!" Vista 3 yelled. "Burn his ship!" The night exploded in blinding light. Red beams lanced from the blade ship and the remaining bug fighter. The Andalite ship glowed, and with a strange slowness disintegrated. Then in a flash and glow of Dracon beams, I saw, or thought I saw, humans. A small group of them, maybe 3 or 4, back in the shadows behind the Visser. "There are people over there," I told Marco. "What? Are they prisoners?" "Take the Andalite," Visser 3 ordered his soldiers. "Hold him for me." 3 big Hork-Bajir grabbed the Andalite and held him down. Their wrist blades were at his throat. But they knew better than to kill him. That was to be Visser 3's personal privilege. Then we saw why a Yeerk as powerful as Visser 3 would inhabit the only captured Andalite body, as we watched Visser 3 began to morph. His Andalite head grew larger, much larger. The 4 horse-like legs merged into 2 and then expanded, each leg becoming as big around as a redwood tree. The delicate Andalite arms sprouted and became tentacles. "This isn't real," Cassie whispered. "This isn't real." What is that noise? It's like a banging. Visser 3 has come to get me. In the hideously bloated head, a mouth appeared. It was filled with teeth as long as your arm. The mouth grew wider and wider, becoming a monstrous, terrifying grin. There was nothing left of the Andalite body. A monster had taken its place. Right, let's have another sound effect here. I'm not going to do the bloody sound effects like by myself. I'm going to make a soundboard do it. And I'll probably put a list of them together. That'll do. My teeth rattled from the sound. I heard someone whispering. Or whimpering. It was me. Visser 3 had become a monster that made the Hork-Bajir and the Taxons look like harmless toys. He reached out with one thick tentacle and grabbed the Andalite by the neck. "No, no, no," I heard Cassie whispering over and over again. "No, no, no, no." "Don't look," Rachel said to her. She put her arm around Cassie's shoulder and held her close. Then she reached for Tobias and took his hand. I guess you never really know someone until you see them scared. And even scared to death. With tears running down her face, Rachel had strength to spare. Visser 3 lifted the Andalite straight up in the air, tearing him from the grasp of the Hork-Bajir. The Andalite prince struck again and again with his tail, but each strike was like a pinprick against such a creature. Visser 3 held the Andalite high in the air, and then Visser 3 opened his mouth wide. And that is chapter 5. So everyone's always saying how dark Animorphs is. And we're starting to get a glimpse of it now already. Most definitely. It gets dark quite early, I must say. We've already found out that the Yeerks have slaves, which in itself is a pretty dark concept. And now, chapter 6 is where Elfangor is eaten rather mercilessly. So let's crack on with it, shall we? I don't know what came over me right then. I had been so afraid, so terrified, but it was like something just snapped in my head. I couldn't just hide and watch. I couldn't. You filthy... I jumped to my feet. I snatched up a piece of rusted iron pipe from the ground and started to climb over the wall. I guess I just went crazy or something. It had to be craziness, because there was no way that I, alone, armed with a piece of pipe, was going to accomplish anything. No! The Andalite's silent cry made me hesitate. I felt Marco's hand grabbing at my shirt and pulling me back. Tobias and Marco held me down. Rachel put her hand over my mouth. I was trying to scream or curse or something. "Shut up, you idiot," Marco hissed. "You're just going to get us all killed." "Jake, don't." Cassie put her hand on my cheek. "He doesn't want you to die for him. Don't you realise he's dying for us?" I shoved Marco and Tobias away angrily, but I was in control of myself again. I peeked over the wall again. The Andalite prince was helpless in the grasp of Visser 3. I saw him held high in the air. I saw Visser 3 open his monstrous, gaping jaws. I saw the Andalite fall into that open mouth. The mouth closed. The teeth ripped the Andalite apart. And the Andalite prince Elfangor Cyreniol Shantor died. At the very end, he cried out. His cry of despair was in our heads. His cry will always be in our heads. The Hork-Bajir controllers began making a huffing sound, like whoa, whoa, whoa. Maybe they were laughing or applauding. We sort of find out what a Hork-Bajir laugh sounds like later on. I'm going to use this noise as the representation. Yeah, I'll probably put a soundboard together for all of this. Come on, where is it?
Oh, don't. Oh,
it's clearly not it.
Okay.
Okay, that'll do. Maybe they were laughing or applauding. The Taxon controllers rushed forward and crowded around Visser 3. They seemed to be stretching up towards him, and then I saw why. A piece of the Andalite fell from the Visser's jaws, and the nearest Taxon greedily gobbled it up. Shit. Tobias turned away and covered his face with his hands. Cassie had tears streaming from her eyes. So did I. I heard a sound that was strange because it was so normal. It was laughter. Human laughter. The humans. The human controllers, because that's what they were laughing. Like they were at some kind of a show. For a moment it seemed to me like one of those laughing voices was familiar, like I'd heard it before. But then the sound was swallowed up in the huffing of the Hork-Bajir. Visser 3 morphed out of his monstrous form and slowly regained his Andalite body. "Ah," I heard him think. "Nothing like a good Antarian Bogmuff for taking a bite out of your enemies." Again the human controllers laughed and the Hork-Bajir controllers huffed, and I heard a familiar human laugh I could not quite place. Marco started throwing up. It was an understandable thing to do, but somehow that sound caught the attention of the nearest Hork-Bajir. Somehow, of course it would. Bloody hell. We're supposed to have good hearing, gonna hear bleh. The snakehead turned. He was perfectly still. We were perfectly still. The Hork-Bajir turned towards us. The near-sighted eyes were aimed directly at our little hiding place. I don't know who panicked first. Maybe it was me. Maybe we just had all the fear and horror we could stand. It was like an electric shock went through all of us. We were running before I had a chance to even know what I was doing. I ran. I gasped for air. A cry went up from the Hork-Bajir. "Split up," I yelled. "They can't follow all of us." Marco and Tobias and Cassie took off in 3 different directions. Rachel was still right beside me. Glancing back, I saw the Hork-Bajir hesitate, unsure of who to chase. Rachel and I are the fastest runners. Tobias is totally out of shape, and Marco and Cassie are too short to be really fast. So I figured if the alien were to be chasing anyone, it ought to be us. I guess Rachel thought the same thing. She slowed down just a little and began yelling and waving her arms. Come on, you!" And then she said some words I didn't realise Rachel even knew. Let's see if we can fill in the gap here. God, this website is so slow.
See you later, fucker!
The two nearest Hortbagier snapped around and took off after us. Gafrash here. Gafrash fit. Enemy get. It's gonna be weird for me to do their voices. Even in my panic, it surprised me. They were talking some mix of their own alien language and ours. Gafrash fit naha. I get, I kill. I ran. Suddenly my foot slammed something and I was down. I hit the ground hard. It's a typical bloody cliche moment, isn't it? Catherine, you just had to include a bloody cliche. Typical bloody movie trope. The wind was knocked out of me. I tried to fill my lungs again. Rachel ran on. She didn't know I had fallen. A spear of red light struck a concrete pipe just beside me. The concrete vaporised. The two Hortbagier were coming after us, bounding like some devil kangaroos. I was up and running. Rachel must have realised I wasn't with her anymore. She stopped and started to come back towards me. Don't be an idiot, I yelled. Run! She hesitated just a second, but she knew she couldn't do anything more for me. She ran. I saw a dark hole ahead and raced towards it. A doorway. Inside it was as black as a grave. It was one of the buildings that had almost been completed. Just bare concrete walls and scattered junk. But I knew I'd been here before. Marco and I had walked all through it. There were hallways and little side rooms. It was like a maze. Marco, Rachel, had they got away? And what about Cassie and Tobias? I tried to get my brain to concentrate as I scurried across the first big room. There was a corridor. Somewhere. I groped in the darkness and found a wall. I heard the sound of claw-like feet, huge, tearing, rending claw feet scraping over the bare concrete. A bottle went skittering across the floor. The Hortbagier was close, and in the total darkness my superior human vision wasn't much use. But I knew my way around the empty building. At least, I would have known my way around if my brain had been working. I felt my hand go into emptiness. A doorway. Yes, it led down a hallway. I went through just as the light came on behind me. Someone had brought a flashlight. Efnod tutel fale not fit. Whatever order. No need to capture them. Whoever you find, kill. The first voice had been Hortbagier. The second voice was human. And the weird thing was, that voice sounded familiar. I tried to think. I knew I'd heard that voice somewhere. Where? Just save their head, the human told the Hortbagier. Bring that to me, we can identify it. I slid quickly along the wall. The light followed just steps behind me. I racked my brains. Had there been a passageway? Yes, there it was. As silently as I could, I slipped into it. The flashlight beam was just centimetres behind me. I kicked something soft. Hey! It was a man. He'd been lying on the ground, wrapped in a blanket. Hey, get out of here. This is my place, and I ain't got nothing for you to steal. I started to warn him, but one of the Hortbagier was there. The flashlight landed on the homeless man's face. He blinked like an owl. There was an alcove right behind me. I backed through. The homeless guy screamed. I heard the sound of a scuffle. Maybe the guy got away. I hope so. But I never found out. Because with the Hortbagier distracted, I ran. I ran and ran and ran. And as I ran, I really hoped it was all just a dream. That's up to chapter 7. And at this point, I'm going to go to the lab. Where's my book? Let's use the Animorphs bookmark so I can save my place. Be right back. So we've gotten through the first scene, or act of Animorphs. Good stuff. A few little bits here and there that are probably retconned quite soon afterwards. Now that is the iconic scene. Not too much to comment on, really. I mean, anything out of the usual. But I'm enjoying it so far. We're about a third of the way through, and I just hope my voice makes it to the end. If it starts to go a bit crap, I'll probably split the recording into half. Alright, so we move onwards to chapter 7. Follow along. Somehow I made it home. I don't know how. I have no memories of anything after that last sight of the Hawkbridge. I wish I had no memories of anything that happened that night. If only I could forget it all. I called around to the others. Everyone was shaky, but they were all alive. Rachel kept trying to apologise for leaving me. Margot just kept asking me if I was sure this wasn't a dream. I guess I should have had the worst nightmares of my life that night, but I didn't. The world of nightmares was a joke compared to my new reality. But by the next morning, a Saturday, I half believed it all had been a nightmare. The only thing that seemed real, really real, was the way the Andalite had of smiling with just his eyes. I woke when my mum started pounding on my door. "Jake, are you awake in there?" I was now. Yeah, I groaned. "I'm up. Your friend Tobias is here." Excuse me. Tobias? What's Tobias doing here? "It's me," Tobias's voice. "Can I come in?" Sure. I sat up in my bed and blinked several times, trying to get my eyes unglued. The door opened. I heard Tobias say thank you to my mum. He was glowing. I swear he was glowing. Not like he was radioactive or anything. I don't mean that. It's just that his eyes were shining bright and his face was one big grin. And he seemed to be tingling with energy, bouncing like he couldn't stand still. "I did it," Tobias said. I tried to get my hair to go in one direction by raking my fingers through it. "What are you talking about?" I was yawning when he answered. "I became dude." Dude. Did that say it? No, dude. I stopped yawning. My mouth actually snapped shut. Dude is Tobias's cat. Huh? Tobias glanced around like there might be spies in the room. I became Dude, just like the Andalite said. I just stared. It was so amazing. It didn't hurt or anything. I was petting him and thinking about the whole thing last night, right? So I thought, why not give it a try? He was pacing back and forth, snapping his fingers, bursting with enthusiasm. Very unlike Tobias. I didn't even know how to begin, so I just made sure the door to my room was locked. Fortunately, my uncle was still asleep. Tobias is the most screwed up family I know. He never knew who his father was, and his mum just decided to leave him a few years ago. Since then he had been shuttled back and forth between his uncle here and his aunt, who lives on the other coast. His aunt and his uncle can't stand each other, and it's like Tobias is some burden they try to shove off on the other. I get the feeling neither of them cares about Tobias. So there I was, just sitting on my bed, thinking about it, concentrating, thinking about becoming Dude. I looked down at my hand. He grinned at me. "What do you think I saw, Jake?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know. I had fur, Jake, and I was growing claws. You should have seen the real Dude. He went nuts. I had to put him outside before I could morph all the way. He clawed me up pretty good. Tobias stuck a sliced finger into his mouth. I swallowed hard. Okay, this was definitely crazy now. Tobias, is it possible that maybe you just dreamed all this? Not a dream, he said. Now he was serious, Tobias again. The grin was gone. It's all true, Jake. All of it. His eyes met mine. I knew what he was saying. He had tried to pretend it was all a nightmare too. But it was real. I looked away. I didn't want to start believing it had all been real. I wanted it all safely stored away in my head. Just another bad dream. Bad dreams should stay in your head, not come jumping out into real life. I just kept concentrating on changing, Tobias said. And in a few minutes I was not myself anymore. His eyes bored in on me. You have no idea what it's like, Jake. Being a cat is so... I can't even describe it. You're so strong, for one thing. Just all this coil power and the way you can move. You know what I did? I jumped on my dresser, a metre straight up in the air, and I landed like a feather. 1 metre. You know how high that is when you're a cat? It's like a person jumping maybe 10 metres straight up. He stopped suddenly and looked at me. You don't believe me, do you? He said. Look, Tobias, it's just that sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between something real and something you're just imagining or dreaming. You think I'm crazy? I considered for a minute. I don't know, Tobias. Let's review the facts. You say you turned into your own pet cat. Turned into an actual cat. Yeah, I have to say that sounds crazy to me. Tobias nodded thoughtfully. He gave a little smile. I understand, Jake. You still don't want it to be true. What? You mean, do I want to believe that you can change yourself into a cat? And all the rest of it? Do I want to believe that Earth is being invaded by slimy slugs who live in people's brains and turn them into slaves? Do I want to believe that... Duh. No. I don't want to believe any of it. And how about the Andalite? He asked in a quiet voice. I hesitated. I don't know why, but I didn't want to pretend the Andalite away. Tobias put his hand on my arm. Stand right there. What? What are you going to do? There. What are you going to do? I'm going to help you decide whether it's real or not. Tobias, just wait and don't scream or anything. So I waited. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Tobias just stood there. I glanced at his face. His eyes were different. The pupils weren't completely round anymore. I swear there was reflective greenish light in them, and his mouth was protruding a little, puffing out. He was shrinking, growing smaller right before my eyes. The neck of his shirt was loose. His trousers started scrunching up at the ankles. He was shrivelling, and at the same time, fur, yes, fur, began to grow on his hands and neck and face. It was grey, striped with black, just like dudes. I had this absurd desire to start giggling. Tobias was becoming a tabby cat. But I know if I started giggling, I'd just keep on and never ever be able to stop. Tobias was more cat than human now. The pointed ears rose atop his head. The whiskers stuck straight out from beneath his delicate pink nose. He had dropped to all fours, clothing now half draped over him, like so many rags. His tail twitched. Yeah, his tail. I wondered if I would just drop dead from the lump that had filled my throat, or from the jackhammer pounding of my heart. Then I wondered if I was still asleep. But if it was a dream, it was a really convincing one. I was standing there in my bedroom, staring down at a grey-black cat less than 2 minutes ago, that less than 2 minutes earlier had been my friend Tobias. Yeah, I don't think he was considered your friend, Jake. You've only known him for like 3 hours. So Tobias gets the award for first morph. Round of applause, everyone. Round of applause, Tobias. We're storming through this now. How many chapters are there? We're looking at around 27. And we're on chapter 8. So we're getting there. We're getting there, gang. Chapter 8. I hope I'm asleep, I muttered. I really do. You're not asleep. Is that you? I demanded of the cat. Can you hear me? Tobias sounded surprised, although sounded wasn't quite the right word. Yeah, I said cautiously. I didn't know I could send thoughts like this, Tobias said. Just like the Andalite. I guess it only works when you're morphed. I'm talking to a cat, I realised, and I thought Tobias was crazy. I wondered if Tobias had heard my thought. I concentrated. Tobias, can you hear me? Yeah, he said. I hear you. No, Catherine, no. That doesn't happen again, does it? Liar! That's it. That's a KASU. Catherine Applegate screw up. For clarification, no, you can't thought speak while human to someone else who's morphed. I know that for a fact. That was retconned like pretty much after that sentence. Did you hear my thoughts before that? I asked. No. I don't think it works that way. You have to think at me for me to hear. Hey, what's this? Suddenly, Tobias leapt through the air. He pounced precisely on an autographed baseball that was lying in the corner, maybe at 1.5 meters. That is so excellent. Hey, pull a string for me to chase. Pull a string? Why? Because it's so fun. I dug in my desk drawer and found a length of string left over for my birthday gift. A birthday gift. I'm not exactly big on keeping my room clean. The string was from her birthday 2 years ago. How's this? I drew the string slowly across the floor, less than 1 meter from Tobias's nose. He settled back on his haunches and began wiggling his hindquarters. He pounced. He landed on the string, grabbed it in his strong, sharp teeth, rolled over and began ripping at the string like it was the only thing on earth that mattered. I tried pulling the string away, but he pounced again. Yes, got it! Tobias, what are you doing? Pull it faster. I see it. I got it. Tobias, what are you doing? I shouted. You're playing with a string. Suddenly, he stopped. His tail twitched. He looked up at me with those cold cat eyes, but I'm sure I saw a look of confusion there. I don't know, he admitted. It's like I'm me, but I'm also dude. I want to chase strings and, oh man, if only there was a real live mouse around. I'd really love to track it, to follow it so quietly, to listen to its heartbeat, just to hear its scratchy little feet. I'd wait till the right moment, and then a perfect pounce through the air, claws stretched out. He extended his claws to demonstrate. Tobias, I think we're learning something here, I said. Amazing how quickly I was becoming used to the idea of talking to a cat. What? What are we learning? I think you aren't just Tobias. You really are a cat. I mean, you have all the same instincts. You want to do things that a cat wants to do. Yeah, I can feel it. It's like I'm two different animals melded into one. I can think like a person and like a cat. You better change back, I said. He nodded his cat head up and down. Very weird to see, I can tell you. A cat nodding yes in a thoughtful, normal manner. You're right. The change back to human form was at least as strange as the change to cat. The fur disappeared, leaving bare patches of pale skin behind. A nose grew out of the flat cat face. The tail was sucked up like a snake going up in a vacuum cleaner. Does that happen often? I've never seen that happen, but apparently Catherine might have seen that. Tobias stood there, looking embarrassed. He quickly pulled on his clothes. Maybe with some practice we can figure out how to change back into our clothes. We? He smiled his gentle smile again. Don't you get it yet, Jake? If I can do it, so can you. I shook my head. I don't think so, Tobias. Suddenly he grew angry. He grabbed me by both shoulders and actually shook me. Don't you understand, Jake? It's all true. All of it. I pushed him away. I didn't want to hear it. But he kept after me. Jake, it's all true. The Andlight gave us these powers for a reason. Fine, I snapped. You use them. I will, he said. But we'll need you, Jake. You most of all. Why me? He hesitated. Jeez, Jake, don't you understand? I know what I can do and what I can't do. I can't make plans and tell people what to do. I'm not the leader. You are. I laughed rudely. I'm not the leader of anything. He just looked at me with those deep, troubled eyes. Eyes I can only now see eyes I can now see only in my memory. That's a little foreshadowing there for you. Spoilers. Yeah, Jake, you are our leader. You're the one who could bring us all together and help us defeat the controllers. We have the ability to be much more than we are, to have the stealth of a cat and the eyes of eagles, and the sense of smell of a dog and the speed of a horse or a cheetah. We're going to need it all if we have any hope of holding out against the controllers. I wanted it not to be true. I wanted none of it to be true. But I knew that it was. I nodded slowly. It felt like I was agreeing to something awful. Like I was volunteering for a trip to the dentist or something much worse. It felt like 1,000,000 kilograms of weight had just landed on my shoulders. I knew what I had to do next. Well, I said grimly, I guess I'd better go find Homer. Homer. That's my dog. Happy days. That was chapter 8. Vape break. This is one of the longer books as well. Christ, it is long. It's over 180 pages. Jesus. I don't think any of the others are that long. At least none of the main series ones. Yeah, this is a long. This is a long one. I'm a third of the way through, and I'm 1.5 hours. So that adds up to. Yeah, we're looking at about 4.5 hours of me yapping on. But hey ho. If you get fed up, put a bookmark in this video and carry on. Don't go read it yourself because it's not as entertaining as watching me put sound effects to it. Right, let's carry on, shall we? For fuck's sake. Chapter 9. It isn't painful. Morphing, I mean. I petted Homer for a while, feeling like a complete and total fool. This is the stupidest thing I have ever done, I told Tobias. Look, you have to concentrate. At least I did. I mean, I formed this mental picture of Dude, right? I thought about becoming him. I see. So I have to, like, meditate on becoming a dog? That's right. You have to think about it. You have to want it. Normally I would have figured he was nuts. But I'd just seen him turn into a cat. So if he was nuts, so was I. I thought about becoming Homer. As I stroked his fur, I formed a picture in my mind of me becoming Homer. Homer became weirdly quiet while I did it, like he was asleep. Only his eyes were open. Just like Dude, Tobias commented. I think the process kind of puts the animal into a trance or something. He's just scared because he thinks his master is a Looney Tune. I continued stroking Homer's fur and concentrating, and Homer continued to lie very still. Okay, now what? I asked Tobias. Now we better put Homer outside. He might get slightly freaked by watching you turn into him. It took Homer about 10 seconds to come out of his trance, but then he jumped up, normal, hyperactive Homer again. I put him outside in the yard. Tobias was sitting patiently when I got back, just waiting. Give it a try, he urged me. Think about it. Want it. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. I recalled the picture of Homer I'd formed in my mind. I thought about becoming Homer. I opened my eyes. Bow wow, I said, laughing. Guess it didn't work for me, Tobias. The back of my hand itched and I scratched it. Jake, Tobias said. What? Look at your hand. I looked at my hand. It was covered with orange fur. I jumped about half a metre straight up into the air. Ah! Ah! I stared at my hand. The fur had stopped growing. Don't be scared, Tobias advised. Go with it. Now you've stopped the morph, you have to concentrate. My hand, I said. Fur. Yeah, and your ears, Tobias said. I ran to the mirror over my dresser. My ears had moved. They had slid up the side of my head and were definitely larger than they should be. Go on, it's so cool, Tobias said. Cool? It's creepy. It's weird. I mean, look at my hands. I have fur. You have to do this, Tobias said. I don't have to do anything, I said sullenly. Tobias nodded. Okay, you're right. You don't have to do this. You can just forget what we saw last night, and forget what we know. And as the Yerks take over more and more people, you can just ignore it. We can all just go along and grow up in a world where human beings are nothing but bodies to be used by murdering aliens. Okay, when he put it that way, it didn't sound like a great option. Come on, Tobias urged. I swallowed hard. I closed my eyes. I thought of Homer. Of being Homer. I felt the itchiness again, and when I opened my eyes there was fur growing on my arms. And fur growing out of my face. And fur curling up from under my collar. My legs itched, and I realised they were growing fur too. My bones. Well, they didn't exactly hurt, but they did feel very strange. You know when you go to the dentist and he gives you Novocaine so that the drill doesn't really hurt, but you know it should hurt? I guess that's what it's like. My bones shortened. I could feel my backbone stretching as it extended out into a tail. Not quite how it would work. There was a scraping sound as my knees suddenly reversed direction. That definitely wouldn't work. Anatomy. I toppled forward, no longer able to walk upright. When my hands hit the floor, they weren't exactly hands anymore. The fingers were gone. All that was left were short, stubby nails. You do still have... Catherine, your dog anatomy is all over the bloody place here. I mean, honestly. First, properly describe morph and it's all wrong. Then again, she's not a... As far as I know, she's not an animal expert. So. My face bulged out. My eyes drew closer together. Tobias got up and tilted the mirror down so I could see myself. I watched the final transformation as the last patches of my pink human flesh disappeared, and the tail, my tail, sprouted to its full length. I was a dog. It was insane, but just the same, I was a dog. I know I should be scared by all this, only I wasn't. I was ecstatic. I was giddy. I was thrilled. Happiness just washed over me. Happiness filled me up. I breathed in through my ridiculously long nose and wow, the smells. Oh, man, you have no idea. I breathed in and right away I knew my mum was toasting a waffle in the kitchen. And I knew Tobias had walked through the territory of a big male dog. And I knew things I couldn't even explain in human words. It was like being blind all your life, and then suddenly you can see. I ran over to Tobias and sniffed his shoe. I wanted a better idea of who that big male dog was. From the scent of his urine picked up by Tobias's shoe, I got a sort of picture of him. See, Homer knew him. His owners called him Streak. Weird name for a dog. He was neutered like me. He spent most of his time in his yard, but he broke out sometimes by digging under his fence. He got a mix of canned and dry food. Purina. No table scraps, unlike me. All this information made me happy all over again, and I had to wag my tail. I looked up at Tobias. He looked tall and strange and not very colourful. I wasn't all that interested in looking at stuff, smelling things, was way better. Intruder! There was a noise in my yard. A dog. An unknown dog in my yard. An intruder. I ran to the window and perched against it and cut loose. Oh, look at this soundboard up again. Let's do this.
Woof, 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 woof.
This soundboard is crap. Soundboard.
You're fired.
You're fired. I barked as loud as I could. No way some unknown dog was just going to walk through my yard. Jake, get a grip, Tobias said. That's Homer out there. Homer? What? But I took my tail between my legs. What was going on? Jake, listen to me, Tobias said. It's just what happened to me when I morphed into a cat. The dog brain is part of your brain now. You have to deal with it. But there's a dog in my yard. That's Homer, Jake. You are Jake. You're just in a body copied from Homer's DNA. That's the real Homer out there. You just put him out there. Focus. You are Jake. Jake. I took several deep breaths. The smells. Oh boy. There was this one smell I couldn't quite... Focus, Jake. I ordered myself. Focus. Slowly I calmed the dog part of my mind. Let go of the smells. Let go of the sound of a dog out in your yard. It wasn't easy that first time. Being a dog is so completely amazing. For one thing, there's nothing halfway about it. You're never sort of happy. You're happy. 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 You're never sort of bummed. You're totally, completely bummed. And boy, when you get hungry in dog form, you are nuts on the subject of food. There was a knock on my bedroom door. Yes, my bedroom door. I knew who I was again. I was Jake. Jake with 4 legs, a tail and a snout, but Jake. The knocking seemed incredibly loud to my dog ears. Jake, you got Homer in there with you? My brother Tom's voice. Mum's on the phone. Stop him yapping. He opened the door and stepped in. He looked around, confused. Who are you? He demanded of Tobias. I'm Tobias. I'm a friend of Jake's. Where is he? Oh, he's around, Tobias said. Tom looked down at me. There was a strange smell about him. My dog brain couldn't quite identify it. It was I do have restless leg, by the way. If I'm like shaking, I'm sorry about that. I've got restless leg. It's a little coffee. It was unsettling, an unsettling, dangerous smell. And somehow, in my own mind, I heard the echo of a laugh. A very human laugh I had heard the night before, as Visser 3 swallowed the Andalite whole. Bad dog, Tom said to me. You keep quiet. Bad dog. And then he left. I was devastated. I wasn't a bad dog. Not really. I was just barking because some other dog was in my yard. Bad dog? I was a bad dog? Oh, I wanted to be a good dog. I crept into the corner, utterly miserable. Tobias knelt down and patted my head. When he scratched me behind the ears, I felt a little better. So we have our first person morph. I'm out of coffee. Bollocks. This soundboard is a bit crap.
Come on, chef. Woof woof.
That's not the...
Woof, 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 woof.
Woof.
Okay. Oh dear. I hope you're enjoying. I hope you're relaxing. I hope you've got your book as well and you're reading along and coming to the same thoughts I'm having. Yeah, still a lot of KASUs, but generally it's fine. been a while since I read all these, so some things still come as a surprise. Right, chapter 10. Again, sorry for my restless leg. I'm not sure if you can see me shaking. Am I still recording? Yes, I am. Thank Christ. Last thing I want is to have finished chapter 3 and then the recording stops. Right, let's do this. Chapter 10. I called all the others on the phone after I got done morphing back into my normal body. Tobias took off on his own, saying he'd hook up with us later at Cassie's farm. I was on the kitchen phone with Cassie when Tobias came in. "Oh, there you are," he said. I covered the mouthpiece. "Yeah. Tobias said you were looking for me before." "I just wanted to shut your dog up," Tom said. He turned the chair around backward and straddled it. I hesitated. For some reason, I didn't want to talk to Cassie with Tom listening in. "I'll just see you in a couple of hours, okay?" I told Cassie. I hung up. I looked over at Tom. He's bigger than me, even though I'm not exactly small. His hair is darker, almost black, while mine is brown. I'd always trusted him. He wasn't like a lot of the guys who pound on their younger brother. We were always kind of close, at least until the last year or so. Somehow we just weren't spending as much time together. Partly was that he was involved in this club called The Sharing. They did all this stuff together, so he was busy a lot of the time. The thing is, Tom should have been the very first person I told about all the stuff that had happened. But as I was sitting there watching him munch toast, I just had this feeling that said, no, this has to be kept secret, even from Tom. Instead, I told him the other thing I was afraid to tell him. I didn't make the team, I said. "What team?" he asked. He looked puzzled. "What team?" "The basketball team. Your old team." "Oh, too bad," he said. "Too bad?" I repeated. I could not believe how little he seemed to care. "It's just sports," he said. He munched another big bite of toast. "Just sports?" I couldn't stop repeating what he said. Tom saying sports were no big deal? No way. He lived for sports. "Yeah, I guess I just don't have your total skill." He shrugged. "Well, I quit the team anyway. A couple of days ago." I practically fell off my chair. "You quit? You quit the team? And you didn't even talk to me about it? What's the deal?" I didn't say anything because I knew you and Dad would make a big thing out of it. "Look, there are more important things than throwing balls through hoops," he said. He had this mysterious look in his eyes. I figured he meant girls were the more important thing. "Besides," he added, "we do much cooler stuff at The Sharing. Maybe you should join up." I was stunned. Obviously, Tom and I were further apart than I had realised. When we were done talking, I headed outside to mow the lawn. I mow the lawn every Saturday. It's my major chore. That and taking out the trash, which I hate. It's supposed to be the English version. Let's take out the rubbish bin. Bloody Americans. When I was finally done mowing and trimming and raking, I hopped on my bike and took off. I had arranged with everyone to hook up at Cassie's farm. It isn't exactly a normal farm, although it had been in the old days. And they do still have horses and cows, but now the big red main barn is the Wildlife Rehabilitation Clinic. Cassie's father runs it. They take in any kind of injured animal except pet-type animals. There are always lots of birds, along with squirrels and deer and skunks and so on. Sometimes they get a bobcat or a fox or even a wolf. Cassie's mum is a vet too, but she works at the gardens. That's this huge amusement park that also has a zoo, or I guess they call it a wildlife park. Luckily, Cassie really loves animals. It would have been hard having a parent if she didn't really love animals. Me, I have a dog. Tobias has a cat. Cassie has everything from porcupines to polar bears. By the time I got there, Marco, Tobias and Rachel were already waiting outside the barn. Rachel had her face turned up to catch the tanning rays of the sun. Cassie wasn't there yet. I figured she was doing chores. She had tons of work to do around there. Hey guys, I said. Rachel opened her eyes and immediately thrust a newspaper at me. Look, she said, pointing to an article. I started to read the article. It wasn't very long. It said that the police claimed there had been a disturbance in the construction site that night before. It said several people had called, claiming they had seen flying saucers landing there, followed by bright lights. Cool, I said, looking up. So the cops know about it now? That's a relief. Keep reading, Rachel said. The article went on to say that the police had arrived on the scene and found a group of teenagers playing with fireworks. The teenagers had run away. Fireworks were discovered at the scene. Portland, obviously. The police spokesman had laughed at the reports of flying saucers. It was just a bunch of kids playing where they shouldn't have been, he said. There were definitely no flying saucers. People shouldn't be so quick to believe such nonsense. But this is a total lie, I said. Ding, 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 correct answer. Johnny, tell our contestant what he's won, Marco said. It's like fake news. It's like watching a CNN. Did you see the last part? Rachel pressed. I read the last sentence. It froze me up good, I can tell you. Police were offering a reward for any information on the teenagers. They're looking for us, Marco said. Why would the police be... I mean, why would they lie? I wondered aloud. But the answer was pretty obvious. Marco laughed his sardonic laugh. Let's see, Captain Brilliant. Would it be because the cops are controllers? Probably not all the cops, Tobias pointed out. If the police have been infiltrated by the controllers, who knows how many of us have too? Rachel asked. Teachers? People in the government? The newspaper and the TV? It does make you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, 2020. Maybe the Yerk invasion was delayed by 20 years or so. I mean, look at the bloody freaking Black Lives Matter going on. Yerks, the lot of them. Right, where are we? Take my political hat off. Shouldn't be getting involved. Don't be a hypocrite telling Michael not to do it in the movie and I'm bloody doing it here. Silly me. What's that? Right. Ow. The other side hurt there. That's weird. Right. Maths teachers for sure, Marco joked. We all looked around nervously, like we expected to find ourselves surrounded by controllers. I tried to tell myself it was all a dream, Rachel said. Been there, I said. For a while no one said anything. We all felt the same terrible feeling, like we were all alone. Like suddenly we were dealing with stuff that was way, way, way over our heads. Marco spoke first. Look, why do we have to deal with this? I say we just forget it. We never talk about it. We never morph. We just deal with our own lives. My camera's still alright yet. Tobias and Rachel both looked at me. They were waiting for me to argue with Marco. Marco, I halfway agree with you, I started to say. Suddenly Marco just went ballistic. We could get killed, he yelled. Don't you get it? You saw what happened to the Andalite. I mean, this is radical stuff, Jake. This is for real. Real. We could all get killed. Tobias was looking at Marco with this sideways look, like he thought maybe Marco was some kind of coward. I knew better. Marco had his reasons. Marco shook his head. In a quiet voice he said, Look, I think these controllers are jerks, but if something happened to me, my dad, he wouldn't be able to handle it. 2 years ago, Marco's mum died. She drowned. They never even found her body. Marco's dad lost it big time. He totally fell apart. He quit his job as an industrial engineer because he couldn't handle being around other people. Now he was working as a night janitor, making barely enough to support Marco. He spent his days sleeping or watching TV with the sound off. You can all think I'm a weasel if you want, Marco said. I don't care. But if I get killed or something, my dad will flat out die. He's only hanging in there because of me. I wondered if I should go pat him on the back or something. But if I had, Marco, being Marco, would have just said something sarcastic. There's Cassie, Rachel said, shielding her eyes and looking off across the open field. A horse galloping across the green. Its black mane was flying in the warm breeze. I didn't see any rider. They're clearly filming the new Lloyd's TSB advert. The horse slowed, trotting closer, and suddenly I had a very strange feeling about that horse. Cassie and I have been here for a while, Rachel said by way of explanation. She's really good at this. Look how fast she can do it. The horse nickered. Nickered? Nickered? Is that a word? The horse nickered softly. Then the animal began to melt. The big brown eyes became slightly smaller. The long muzzle became a human mouth. A thing that was part horse and part Cassie smiled at us with big horse teeth and said, "Hey kids." Marco suddenly sat down. Very hard. He had never seen a morphing. "It's cool," I said, trying to sound very relaxed. "It's just Cassie." I decided I'd better be a gentleman and look away. After all, when Tobias and I had morphed, we kind of morphed right out of our clothes. But I noticed that as Cassie emerged from the horse, she was wearing I thought you weren't looking, Jake. I thought you weren't looking. Liar. But I noticed that as Cassie emerged from the horse, she was wearing a skin-tight blue outfit. One of those outfits girls wear to do aerobics. I watched and saw something beautiful happen. For just a few seconds, she stayed half horse and half human. She reminded me of the Andalite. I realised it was deliberate. Cassie was controlling the way she morphed. "Geez, Rachel," I said, "you're right. Cassie is good." Suddenly we heard the sound of tyres on gravel. We all spun around. Down the gravel and dirt road came a single black and white car. "The cops!" Tobias cried. Oh! Now what I don't understand is how Cassie is just automatically mastered morphing. I mean, in a way, I get it. Some people have almost got a natural talent for something, but natural talent usually comes from something that you do physically that is controlled genetically. There's nothing in human DNA that controls the ability to morph. But again, this is fiction. I'm getting carried away. So we're nearly halfway. I think what I'll do for this video is I shall split it. So we'll get to chapter 14, and then we'll call it a video. We'll probably do this in 2 parts so that the video's not too long. And if you like this video, please tell me that you do, because if I don't get any response to this video, I probably won't do any more. I think that's a fair deal. So if you do like it, leave a like on this video, put a comment what you think about the book, and share it with other Animorphs people. And tell me, I don't know, tell me which book you look forward to most of all, that you'd like to be read most of all, or your favourite part of this book. Just tell me something. Let me know that you're watching. Right, so we've got 3 more chapters, and then we'll cut this book in half, shall we? Chapter 11. Oh, vape first. It would be silly of me not to. Right, chapter 11. "Cassie, morph, now!" I snapped. The police car was coming fast. "We do not want to have to explain a half-horse, half-person." "Which way should I morph?" Cassie wailed. "Horse or human?" She reared up slightly on her hind legs. I knew what was happening. She was fighting the horse's urge to panic. Human. Caught myself there. Human, I said. "Everybody, stand in front of her." The police car squealed to a stop, sending the gravel flying. A single policeman stepped out. I waved at him. "Morning," he said. "You kids hiding something?" He's going to beat them, isn't he? He's going to brutalise them. I wanted to look over my shoulder and see what kind of shape Cassie was in. But that would have been a mistake. "Hiding something?" I repeated. "Step aside, all of you," he ordered. We did, revealing Cassie, fully human. The policeman looked puzzled, but then he shrugged. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. "Can we help you, officer?" Rachel asked in her best responsible voice. "We're making some inquiries," he said, still looking at Cassie like something must be wrong with her. I was going to say something that I probably shouldn't say. 2020. We're looking for some kids who were shooting off fireworks at the construction site across from the mall last night. Suddenly, Marcus started coughing. "Something the matter with him?" the policeman asked. "He's got COVID!" Sorry, wrong word. "Nope," I said. "Nothing wrong with him." "We want these kids," the policeman said. "We want them real bad. See, it was dangerous, what they did. Could have been someone hurt. So we want to find these kids." Suddenly, I knew. He was one of them. The policeman was a controller. I looked at his face. It seemed normal, but inside his head was a creature from another planet. An evil, parasitic slug. Just behind those normal, human-looking eyes, something vile lurked. "I don't know anything about it," I lied. He looked at me real close, and I began to sweat. "Hey, you know what?" he said. "You look familiar. You look like a young man I know named Tom." "He's my brother," I said. I was trying not to let my voice go weird. I want to go weird. But I just couldn't forget the fact that it wasn't really some normal human cop I was talking to. Jake doesn't actually know this. He's just speculating this, aren't you? This wasn't even a human anymore. Not really. It was a human controller. The human brain was totally enslaved. "Tom's your brother, eh?" "Well, he's a good kid. I know him from the sharing. I'm one of the adult supervisors. Great group, the sharing. Should come to a meeting." "Yeah, Tom already invited me," I said. "We have a lot of fun." "Yeah," I repeated. "Well, you call me if you hear anything about these kids at the construction site. I should warn you. They may come up with some wild story to conceal their guilt. But you're too smart to believe a bunch of crazy lies, aren't you?" "He's a regular genius," Marco said. Finally, the policeman took off. "Okay, rule number 1, Rachel announced firmly. We don't do anything to attract attention. We have to be secret about everything, especially morphing." Cassie looked embarrassed. "Yeah, it was stupid of me. It's just... Man, it's so amazing running like that. Out in the open spaces, running and running. How did you manage to morph with clothing?" I asked. "When Tobias and I did it, well, let's just say it's a good thing neither of you girls were around. Neither of you girls was around, sorry." "It took some practice," Cassie said. "And it can only be tight clothing. I tried it with a coat on. It got shredded. I don't know what we'll do in the winter." "That's not going to be a problem," Marco said firmly, "because there isn't going to be any more morphing." "Maybe Marco's right," Rachel said. "This is too big for us. We're just kids. We need to find someone important to tell us to. Someone we can trust." "We can't trust anyone," Tobias said flatly. "Anyone can be a controller. We tell the wrong person, we're all dead. And the whole world will be doomed." "I don't want to stop morphing," Cassie said. "Do you realise all we could do with this power? We could communicate with animals, maybe. Help save endangered species." Cassie. Words cannot describe you all. Tobias words my thoughts perfectly here. Humans may be the next endangered species, Cassie, Tobias said quietly. What do you say? Oh, she just shrugs it off. What do you say, Jake? Cassie asked. Me? I shrugged. I don't know. Marco's right. We could all get killed. Rachel's right. This is too major for a bunch of kids. I hesitated. I didn't like what I was about to say. But Tobias is right too. I mean, the whole world is in danger. And we can't trust anyone. So what do we do? Rachel demanded. Hey, it's not up to me to decide, I said hotly. Let's take a vote, Rachel said. I vote we try to live long enough to get driver's licenses, Marco said. I vote we do what the Andalites said. Fight, Tobias said. I don't like the amount of times the word said is used around here. You've never even been in a fight, Marco sneered. You can't handle the punks at school. Suddenly now you want to kick butt on that freakazoid? Tobias said nothing. By the way, freakazoid is such a wonderful word. Tobias said nothing, but a blush spread upon his neck. I vote with Tobias, Rachel said, giving Marco a dirty look. I wish we could all dump this on someone else, but we can't. Let's think it over for a while, Cassie said. This is a big decision. I mean, it's not like we're deciding whether to wear jeans or a skirt. I was relieved. Thank goodness for Cassie. No, Jake, she said stupid stuff. I'm already worked up over her, and I've not even got halfway through the first book. Jesus. I do love Cassie. Just so everyone knows, I like the character. I like the character a lot. But she does say some stupid crap. Yeah, let's wait for a while, I agreed. In the meantime, no one say anything to anyone. We just go back to normal life. There was a smirk on Marco's face. He thought he'd won. But I wasn't so sure. Tobias was still blushing. He sent a secret, grateful look to Rachel. Marco and I took off towards my house again, trying to act normal. We talked about the baseball season. We talked about who was going to slaughter who in Dead Zone 5, which is this CD game. CD game? Wow. I've never heard it referred to as a CD game. Okay. We were going to play on my computer. Wow, this is so 90s. By the time we'd reached my house, we'd run out of stuff to talk about. We played Dead Zone for a while. Neither of us did very well. Face it, games just weren't all that interesting anymore. My mind was totally not there. Tom came in after a while. Hey, you guys, he said. Can I give it a try? It had been months since Tom had done anything with me like play a game. Sure. Marco moved over and gave Tom his control stick. We played for a few minutes, and Tom did pretty well. But then it was like he got bored or something. He gave the control back to Marco and just sat back and watched. You guys hear about all that stuff going on at the construction site last night? He asked me. Marco jerked in surprise. What stuff? I said. It was in the newspaper, Tom said casually. They said some kids were there shooting off fireworks. Bunch of morons who lived around there decided it was flying saucers or something. He laughed. Flying saucers, right. Marco and I both laughed too. Yeah, it was just these kids playing with fireworks, Tom said. Uh-huh, I said. I was trying very hard to concentrate on the game. You were all at the mall last night, weren't you? Tom asked me. Uh-huh. Did you come back through the construction site? I shook my head. No way. Didn't see any kids hanging around there, maybe? Nope. It's not like I'd get them in trouble, Tom said. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. They're just shooting off fireworks and they get all these people terrified of flying saucers. Uh-huh. Flying saucers, he said. He laughed again. Only complete dips believe that kind of stuff. Dips. He leaned close. You don't believe in that, do you? Aliens and spaceships and little green men from Mars? I wanted to say no. None of them had been little or green. I thought the whole Bajou were green. Never mind. But I just said, no way. Tom nodded and stood up. Cool. You know, Jake, I feel like we haven't been hanging around much lately. I guess not, I agreed. That's too bad, he said. He snapped his fingers like he'd just had an idea. You know, you should join the sharing. Marco, too. Why should we join? Marco asked. Tom just grinned. I gotta go, he said. He gave me a playful punch on the shoulder. Catch you guys later. And don't forget, let me know if you hear anything about these kids at the construction site. He left. Marco looked at me. Jake, he's one of them. What? Tom. Tom's one of them. Your brother is a controller. Ooh, spicy. That's chapter 11. One big revelation after another. Ugh. Grand. Stunning. We'll crack on with chapter 12. I would drink my coffee, but I've run out. And I don't want to get more. Chapter 12. I swung my fist and caught Marco in the side of the head. Whang! He jumped back and I swung again. But Marco was quick. He dodged my second swing and I slipped and went down. Marco snatched the bedspread off my bed, threw it over me to tangle up my arms, and sat on me. Jake, quit acting like a stupid jerk, he said. I was trying to grab him, but he had me pretty good. Take that back, I yelled. Not likely, Marco said. You think it's just a coincidence he's suddenly all interested in what's happening at the construction site? I knew it looked bad. Bad. Even as I struggled to get free and kick Marco's butt, I had this sudden flash about the smell I'd noticed on Tom when I was morphed into a dog. And there was that laugh I'd heard at the construction site. But no. This was Tom, my big brother. Tom would never, ever have let those slimy creeps into his head. Never. I'll let you up if you calm down, Marco said. Look, maybe I'm wrong, okay? I stopped struggling, and Marco let me up. You have to admit it, Jake, it doesn't look good. Tom is not one of them, okay? That's final, I said. Whatever, Marco said. Just don't punch me again, because I might have to hit you back. Just then I heard this fluttering noise at my window, like someone beating on it very slowly. I went to the window, followed by Marco. There was a bird there, some kind of huge bird like an eagle or a hawk, beating its wings against the window. Let me in, all right? I can't hover here forever. Marco's eyes went wide. He'd heard it too. I opened the window and the bird flew straight in. It landed on my dresser. It was almost 2/3 of a metre long, mostly brown, with gnarled talons and a sharp, hooked beak. Why am I saying hooked? I like it. Sometimes I just like to add little things here and there. It's some kind of eagle or something, Marco said. A red-tailed hawk, actually, Tobias said. Is that you, Tobias? Marco demanded. I thought we weren't going to do any more of this morphing. I never agreed to that. Well, morph back, Tobias. Oh, sorry, that's wrong tone. I thought I was doing Marco there. Well, morph back, Tobias, I said. You know what the Underlight said, never stay in form for more than 2 hours. More foreshadowing. Tobias hesitated. He tilted his hawk's head and peered at me with an incredibly concentrated gaze. At last he hopped over onto my bed. Such foreshadowing. Let me tell you something. It is beyond weird, watching feathers turn into skin. The brown feathers ran together and merged and turned pink. It was like the feathers were melting, like they had turned into wax and were being heated up. The beak disappeared quickly and lips grew out of it. The talons split into 5 and became toes. Halfway through the process of changing, Tobias was a lump, half pink, half brown, with feather-like patterns still visible on his back and chest. His face was small and mostly human, except that he still had those sharp, alert hawk's eyes. Two tiny, shriveled arms protruded from the front of his chest, with fingers like a baby's. Am I reading this right? His wings... Where does his wings go again? Protruded from the front of his chest with fingers. So the wings should turn into the arms. They're homologous. Biologists, you know what I'm talking about. All in all, it was a pretty disgusting sight. But the human DNA asserted itself over the hawks and he became more normal. About 3 minutes after he'd started the change... 3 minutes? That's quite a while. After he'd started the change, there was a completely normal Tobias, sitting naked on the end of my bed. I haven't figured out how to morph clothes like Cassie, he said sheepishly. Can I borrow some? I loaned him a pair of trousers and a shirt, but my shoes were all the wrong size. That was the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, Tobias said. His whole face was glowing. I was riding the thermals. There's that word. Thermals. Ask any Animorphs fan, or say thermals to an Animorphs fan, and you know. What's a thermal? I asked. That's when there's warm air rising up from the ground. It forms this cushion under your wings. You can just float up there. More than a kilometre up. You just surf the thermals. You guys have got to do it. It's the best thing ever. Tobias, how on earth did you get a hawk morph? I demanded. There's an injured hawk right there in Cassie's barn, he said. There's this cool osprey too, but I decided on the hawk. How did you fly if the hawk you morphed from... How did you fly if the hawk you morphed from was injured? I wondered. Marco shook his head pityingly. Jake, do you ever pay any attention in biology class? DNA has nothing to do with some injury. The DNA wasn't broken, just a wing. No comment. I ignored Marco. You're lucky Cassie's dad didn't catch you, I said to Tobias. He's so depressed, Tobias commented. Who's depressed? Cassie's dad? No, the hawk, I mean. No, I read that wrong. No, the hawk. I mean, I think he knows they aren't trying to hurt him or anything, but he can't stand being cooped up while his wing heals. Tobias's eyes darkened. It's terrible when birds have to be locked up in cages. They should be free. Depends on the kind of bird. Sorry. My mind doth wander. Yeah, free the birds, Marco commented sarcastically. I'll get the bumper stickers printed up. You wouldn't have that attitude if you'd been up there with me, Tobias said angrily. It was cool being a cat and all, but a hawk, it's just total, absolute freedom. My God, it's freedom. I hadn't ever seen Tobias so happy. I mean, Tobias has had a pretty lousy home life. Thinking about it, I suddenly had this feeling. I repeated the warning. No more than 2 hours in morph, right? You keep track of time, right? Tobias smiled. Yeah, I don't have a watch or anything, but with Hawkeyes you can actually see the hands of someone's watch when they're a kilometre below you. It's like being Superman. You can fly, plus you have supervision. Now he's Superman, Marco muttered. I was looking around. I guess I thought I might be able to see something from the air, Tobias said. I was looking for something that might be a yerk pool. The phrase sounded vaguely familiar. I remembered Visser saying something about yerk pools, did he? I don't remember that. Did he ever say something about yerk pool? I don't remember. Go back into the video and tell me. What's a yerk pool? I asked Tobias. It's where the yerks live in their natural state. Every 3 days a yerk has to leave its host body and go into the yerk pool to soak up nutrients, especially Kandrona rays. Marco and I exchanged a suspicious look. Neither of us knew what any of this was. Or neither of us knew any of this, sorry. At the end, Tobias explained, when the Andalite told us all to run for it, I stayed behind for a few seconds. I guess maybe I was too scared to even run. I shook my head. I knew better. Tobias just hadn't wanted to leave the Andalite alone. I think maybe the Andalite meant even more to Tobias than the rest of us. Than to the rest of us. I keep missing words now. My mind is melting. Anyway, he gave me... so they do address the head-touching thing. I'm still not sure if it ever appears again or if it's another plot convenience. Oh, dear. I love Animorphs, but sometimes I do feel that there's a little bit of plot convenience going on. But then it is a kid's book. You've got to expect... Kids' books aren't scholarly masterpieces. Where the hell was I? Anyway, he gave me visions, I guess you'd call them. Pictures, information, a lot of it, all at once. All jumbled. I've even started to sort it all out. But I do know about the Yerk pools and the Kandrona. I wonder if we ever hear from this again, Tobias. Don't think we do. Marco held up his hand, silencing Tobias. Let me check the door, he said. He went to my door and peeked out into the hallway. All clear, he announced. Tobias gave Marco a questioning look. Tom, Marco said. He's one of them. Don't make me hurt you, I warned him angrily. Tom is not a controller. Either way, we should be careful, Tobias said. He lowered his voice. The Kandrona is a device that produces Kandrona particles. See, it's like this little portable version of the Yerk's own home sun. The Yerks need Kandrona particles to live. Like a human needs vitamins or whatever. The Kandrona particles are beamed from wherever the Kandrona is and concentrated in the Yerk pool. Once every 3 days, every Yerk has to leave his host and go into the pool. They soak up the particles and then they re-enter the host body. What does this have to do with you flying around playing Superman? I asked. Well, it seems dumb now, but I was thinking maybe I could see the Yerk pool. He made a rueful smile. Saw a lot of swimming pools and some ponds. You get out there and you realise there are ponds and lakes and streams everywhere. But I didn't see anything special. And what if you found some Yerk pool? Then what? Marco demanded. Then we blow it up, Tobias said. Wrong, Marco said. We decided not to get into this. No, we decided not to decide yet, I said. Well, I've decided, Tobias said. Suddenly the wimp is a hero, Marco sneered. This time Tobias didn't blush. Maybe I just found something worth fighting for, Marco. You don't even fight for yourself, Marco said. That was before, Tobias said softly. Before the Andalite. Before he died trying to save us. I can't let that go. I can't let him die for nothing. So whatever you guys decide, I'm going to fight. One more chapter before we call it a day on this one. We're approaching 2.5 hours, and I think that's going to be a good point to call it quits for today. Chapter 1's a relatively short one. Chapter 1, Chapter 13. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out the other Animorphs content. We've got all sorts on this channel. Remember to check out the Animorphs Discord. That's always fun. If you don't have a link somewhere, just ask me in a comment. Just say, I want to link to the Discord, and I shall let you in. Because I hate the whole... Oh no, go on Disboard. 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 The Animorphs... not forum. The Animorphs Discord server can be found there, and you can get a link through there. So, go there. Right, Chapter 13. We find the Yerk pool, Tobias said, and when we do, we blow it up and kill every one of those evil slugs. I expected Marco to start yelling, but Marco was pretty smart. He could tell that Tobias had reached me with his talk about the Andalite. So he just smiled, a little sneakily. Remember that cop today? The one who was so interested in finding whoever was at the construction site? The cop who is probably a controller? What about him? I said. Well, let's see. He invites you to join the sharing. And now along comes Tom. And suddenly he is very interested in whatever happened at the construction site. And guess what? Tom also invites you to join the sharing. Tobias nods in agreement. Maybe the sharing is an organisation for controllers. Marco smiled. He's my best friend and all, but sometimes Marco really makes me mad. We're pretty sure the cop is a controller. And I don't care what you say, Jake. I think Tom is too. So here's the deal. You want to get into this fight against the Yerks? Marco asked me. Fine. Let's see how much you want to do it when it turns out it's your own brother you have to destroy. That stopped me cold. And I tell you what, that's... We're already getting into sort of more adult moral ambiguity territory here. There's not that much, but it's something you wouldn't typically think of in a kid's book. That sort of conundrum, that sort of problem. Because then you get into issues. Moral issues and principled issues. It's not exactly some video game, is it? Marco said. This is reality. You don't know anything about reality, Jake. Nothing bad has ever really happened to you. You have this perfect family. Like I used to have. His voice cracked a little. He never talked about his mum's death. I realised he was right. I didn't know about reality. Not the way reality had happened to Marco and to Tobias. So maybe we just walk away from this, Marco said. Let someone else fight this fight. Sorry about the Andalite, but I've got enough death in my family. No, I said, surprising myself. The Andalite gave us the morphing power for a reason. It wasn't just for the fun of being a dog or a horse or a bird. He hoped we would fight. Then maybe Tom is the enemy, Marco said. Maybe it's your own brother you'll end up destroying. This Marco is my favourite character, and it's things like this that make it so. He is a smart kid. And he's also very realistic. And he tells it like it is. A bit like Rachel in that regard, but he's got the brains to more back it up. And he hits home a lot of the time. Yes, I said. My throat felt all tight. Maybe that's what will happen. Maybe not. But the first step is to find out more. And I think maybe the way we do that is to check out the meeting of the sharing. Tonight. I'll call the others. Anyone want to come? Cool. You want to stay out of it, Marco? That's cool too. He hesitated. He sent Tobias an angry look, but he said, Okay, it's just a meeting, right? We go and see. I'm in for that. I called the others. Rachel agreed quickly. Cassie had to think about it for a while, but she agreed too. I told Tom we were interested in attending the meeting. Me and Marco and Rachel and Cassie. We'd already decided Tobias would be there too, only in a different way. Tonight's a great meeting to come to, Tom said enthusiastically. We're having a bonfire on the beach. You know, hanging out, playing games and stuff. We'll play night volleyball, which is so funny because half the time guys can't even see the ball. It's great. It's the best organisation. You'll love it. Listening to him, it sure didn't sound like the sharing was connected with the Yerks. You couldn't really picture Visa 3 or a bunch of Texans playing volleyball. I could. It looks ridiculous, but I can think of it. I was thinking maybe we were all just nuts. The sharing was probably just like some new kind of mixed Boy Scouts or something. It wasn't that far to the beach, so we decided not to drive there with Tom. We walked. Tobias walked part of the way with us. Then he stopped. I'll start that again. Tobias walked part of the way with us. Then he stepped behind a dark dune as we got close to the shore. A few minutes later we saw a hawk take flight. There aren't many thermals at night, so he had to work to get altitude. But then I guess he found a decent enough updraft because he soared up and away till he disappeared. I have got to try that, Cassie said. Looks wonderful. Yeah, I agreed. Ahead, the bonfire burned bright on the dark beach. People were all around it, playing, talking, eating. Kids from school, adults, people I didn't know. Others I did. Were they all controllers? I wondered. How could I ever know? And was my own brother one of them? After about an hour of hanging out there on the beach, I was sure I was not. There was no way these guys were aliens. We played some volleyball, me and Tom together on one team. We ate the barbecue ribs they had. I mean, it was just like this normal, good time. The sand was still warm. The night air was chilly, but near the fire it was nice. Now you see why I enjoy this? Tom asked me. It's cool, I said. I looked around all the people having fun. I didn't realise it was so much fun. Well, that's not all it is, Tom said. I mean, it's more than just the fun. Sharing can do all kinds of things for you. Once you're a full member. How do you get to be a full member? I asked. He smiled mysteriously. Oh, that will come later. First you become an associate member. Later the leaders will decide whether to ask you to become a full member. Once you become a full member, the whole world changes. At that moment, something weird happened. I was looking at Tom, and he was smiling at me. But then his face kind of twitched. His head started to pull to one side, like he was trying to shake his head, only he couldn't quite do it. For just a split second there was a look in his eyes, scared or something. He was looking right at me, and it was like some different person, some scared person, was looking out of those same eyes. Then he was back to normal. Or what looked like normal. I have to go for a while now, he said. The full members have a separate meeting. You guys stay here and have fun. Have some more of that barbecue. It's great, isn't it? With that, he was gone into the night. I felt like I'd swallowed barbed wire. I felt like I'd swallowed barbed wire. Marco and Cassie came over. They had just finished playing frisbee in the surf with some other kids. Marco was laughing. Okay, I admit, he said. I admit it, I'm wrong. These are just normal people having a good time. And Tom is not a controller. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Marco was wrong. I knew what I had seen in Tom's eyes. He was trying to warn me. Somehow he had managed to gain control of his face for just a second before the yerk in his head had crushed him. Tom, the real Tom, not the yerk slug in his head, had tried to warn me. And that, ladies and gentlemen and yerks, is where we set aside the book for now. With our lovely Animorphs bookmark. I'll put it back there actually. So I'm going to split this into two because it's already a very long video. How far into the book are we? We're basically 100 pages in. If you like this, please tell me. If you didn't like it, sod off. No, only kidding. If you didn't like it, complain and then go watch my other videos and watch it so much that you get Stockholm Syndrome and turn out to like it in the end. This has been the Animorphs channel, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.